Hello and welcome to the Capital Games Movie Club. I am the Wiz. Zero is out right now. He's actually training to be a bare knuckle fighter champion. You may not know this, but Zero is pretty jacked, and I wouldn't want to see him in a dark alley, so I think he has some good odds. Good luck to you, Zero. I hope you do a good job knocking out fools like Kimbo Slice. That would be an interesting thing to see. So, today, to conclude the theme that we had for the past couple of weeks, which are sports movies, in conjunction with the NFL starting up and the baseball playoffs going on, I figured we'd do another sports movie. And of course, I chose a sports movie that had nothing to do with those two sports. So, hey, makes sense, right? I initially was going to do 8 Men Out because I want to do a baseball movie. And I thought, and since I haven't seen it, and I do like the director of that film, I thought I'd give 8 Men Out a shot. But then IMDb reared its ugly head. And if you haven't been listening to the podcast, and if you haven't, and you just picked this up, hi, how are you? Thank you for listening. I have a very checkered past with the IMDb ratings when it comes to movies, especially with their top 250, because I'm floored by a lot of the movies that are on there that are considered the top 250 of all time in that list specifically. And what I found on there that surprised me was the movie I'm reviewing today, which is Warrior, the 2011 film, directed by Gavin O'Connor, starring Tom Hardy, Joel Edgerton, and Nick Nolte. It's about two estranged brothers who both sign up to be in a multi-million-dollar mixed martial arts tournament. And basically what they do to get themselves ready for that tournament, basically. Yeah, and to go over real quick, and I'll get into more detail about this, this has an IMDb rating of 8.2 out of 10, which is fantastic. And it's got a top-rated movie of 168 out of 250 for IMDb. So I was going into this with rather high expectations, of course, because if a lot of people love a movie and agree it's a great movie, most often than not, it is a quality movie. It's actually good. There are a few exceptions, and it just seems like I come up with I basically land on those exceptions almost every time when it comes to this podcast. But for it to be a good movie and have a lot of people agree it's a good movie, I tend to believe it has to be pretty good. Warrior is not an exception to that. Warrior is a good sports movie, but like a lot of these films is what I would call, it's a good one of those. And what I mean by that is it doesn't rock the boat. It doesn't do anything different. It doesn't do anything that differentiates itself from the others in the genre, but it's well made enough that you can see its quality and love that it was made within the framework of what that genre entails. And that's Warrior, pretty much. Warrior is a good one of those. It's a good sports movie, but if you are looking for something deeper there, it's not really there in this one. And I will get to that more into spoilers, but let's get into the movie itself in our non-spoiler review. So, Warrior, like I said, Warrior is a good movie. It has good performances, I would say, by Tom Hardy and Nick Nolte. But the performance of the film that I think works best is Joel Edgerton's performance as Brendan. Brendan is what he's called in the movie. He's a physics teacher who also happened to once be a professional UFC fighter at one point. And he comes back to the ring in order to save his house from being foreclosed on. That's the conceit of why he is going back into the ring and fighting and doing this again against his wife's wishes, of course. Of course, you know. His character is easily, I would say, the most compelling of the three main characters, which is Joel Edgerton's Brendan, who is the teacher who is trying to save his house. Tom Hardy's Tommy, who is a really down on his luck alcoholic who is trying to get money for some reason and decides to get into this tournament. And Nick Nolte's character, Patty, who is their father, who was an alcoholic, who have since been estranged from his two kids. So, of the three characters, Joel Edgerton's Brendan, I think, is the better written character and probably the more interesting character, and also the best performing character in this movie. Joel Edgerton does a good job in this movie. Not particularly a fan of Edgerton usually. He's had some good roles. He's had some good performances, but he's not one that I genuinely look forward to seeing whenever he does a new movie. I mean, he directed The Gift, of course. He was in Gatsby. Other than that, like he's a good actor. He's just not someone I really look forward to seeing in films because I don't think of him as that dynamic. Tom Hardy, on the other hand, is someone I like seeing in movies, and I think he does a good job. But Tom Hardy has played these types of characters before, and it's not really that interesting in this. Mind you, I think that's more of the writing in this circumstance. But Tom Hardy's acting is good in this for what he has. So I did like him in this. Nick Nolte did have a very good performance in this movie as well, playing the alcoholic father. But again, the writing isn't that deep, and you have to rely on just giving a very good performance with what little he had, and he did. There are a couple of scenes in this with his character that I thought was not very well done and not very well written. But overall, it's a good performance. Now, did he deserve the Oscar nomination for this that he got? I don't know. I haven't seen all the others that have been nominated. I don't think so, at least. But it must have not been that great of a year if he got nominated. But then again, Nick Nolte is a celebrated actor, and actors like that tend to just get nominations when they do decent jobs. See Meryl Streep in some of the movies she's been nominated for, like August Osage County. So, that happens. Anyway, so the main performances are good. I especially like Joel Edgerton in this. I've talked about the writing in this movie, and again, when compared to other sports films, it's solid. It's a solid film. Moves the plot along fine. I think the movie's a little too long. This is a 2-hour and 15-minute film, where I don't think that was necessary. This could have been done in about an hour and 45, if they decided to. Maybe make less of an illusion of what's going on in, let's say, Brendan's school problems that he's having being a teacher. Maybe cut that out a bit, and that's a possibility of what they could have done with that. But yeah, again, for a sports movie, and I hate qualifying that because it sounds like I'm shitting on sports movies. Where there are good sports movies, but the great sports movies talk about more than the actual sport, and whereas the sport is the less interesting part of the movie. And that isn't what Warrior was doing here. Warrior did the opposite. Warrior wanted to make the fighting and the training to the fight the more interesting part than the human interactions and the relationships and the characterization throughout the entire film. They did that in reverse, and that's fine. You can do that. My preference would be the opposite, to make the least interesting thing being the sport and being the fight and everything. That's what I would have preferred in that end. And to me, it kind of hurts the film in the end in a certain aspect that I just didn't like in that point. Direction. When it comes to the directing of the film, the direction's fine. There's not really anything crazy in the movie that needs to be pointed out by the direction. I do want to point out when it came to the actual fights, especially towards the end of the films, I don't like how they were shot. I don't like the decisions they made. One of the camera techniques that this film uses in the fight scenes are common things that they use, like shaky cam. They use a lot of camera movement to signify the brutality of the punches and the takedowns and stuff like that. And I get that, and I get why it was used. But the point is to use them sparingly. And then when you use them sparingly, it adds the emphasization of the brutality of what was going on in the ring. But because they used it, I think a little too much, kind of hurt the fight scenes in this. Like, I came away from the film, I'll put it this way. Before the fights, I was debating on whether this was between a 3.5 star and a 4-star film. After the fights, it's comfortably at a 3. Like, that's my feeling of Warrior, basically, where they had something interesting going before the beginning of the fights, but then when the fights happened is when things started falling apart throughout the film. And part of it is the direction of which they took, and of the writing too. Is it bad? No, it's not. It's solid. It's good. It's just, when the setup was going on, I was genuinely interested in the characters and see where they go from there. And it just didn't feel satisfying, and it just didn't work for me. I sat there at the end of the film going, yeah, that's a decision to make, I guess. And that was it, really. The dynamics between the brothers in this movie, I think, needed a lot more work. The way they do the film, basically, is they're essentially taking two different types of sports story movies. Okay, sports movie stories. One is the underdog story, and one is the damaged person trying to redeem himself story. And they tried to take those two stories, mix them together into one movie, and add drama by these two characters being brothers. And in that aspect, it didn't work. It really didn't. They were separate, and they were separated and treated as separate entities throughout the entire film until maybe one or two instances where they're together. But I sat there throughout the film going, why is this necessary? Why do that? Why did you need to do that plot point? It really was not that necessary, and they built a little bit into the movie, but not enough to make what they did satisfying. It just felt like a odd plot point or an odd detail in the movie. And I think that's also what suffers from this film from being a great movie to a good movie, is the details. Some details they wash over. They just say, well, we don't need to deal with these types of details. But then they get oddly specific in other details that I felt were unnecessary. And I will get to that in spoilers. Warrior, like I said, could have been, I think, a great movie. It just, to me, is a great to good one of those movies. It's a movie that you have to go in knowing exactly what it is and not expect much else. And if you have that mentality, yes, you will really enjoy it. It's in that aspect a great movie. But I look for films that, when it comes to being great films, to be a movie that people who don't enjoy those type of movies will find themselves enjoying. And I don't see that in this. I see others looking at this and picking it, not only just picking it apart for certain reasons, but really questioning why they went certain directions in the movie. But if you keep it within the context of it being a sports movie and going through those cliches and going through those plot points that are well worn, it's a quality movie. And on that aspect, I did like it. I just wished it was better than that. And I don't think it is. Okay, so why don't we get into spoilers for Warrior? If you haven't watched the movie, you can stop, watch the movie, and come back if you are interested in listening to my thoughts on the spoilers. I will start spoilers for Warrior in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so I mentioned that the movie concentrates on certain details that were unnecessary, but in other details, it kind of washes it off, essentially. The one that they concentrated on that I thought didn't work had to do with Tommy, and that was Tommy being a war veteran. The aspect of Tommy being a war veteran was about a minute and a half of filming and of the film and of dialogue. But I understand why they decided to go that route, because they want to make Tommy more sympathetic when really he's not. He really is not that sympathetic in this movie. And in order to gain the sympathy of the audience through this, they make him out to be a hero. The quote is that he pulled the door off of a tank to save somebody from drowning, is essentially what happened. And then he walked away without getting awards, without getting any kind of accolades for it. And that is to show how much of a strong character and good person he is, even though nothing else in the movie would actually make you believe that he is. Now, granted, some of you will defend this character by saying he's obviously wounded. He's obviously somebody who's gone through a lot of shit. He has trauma. He has issues. And to expect him to be really sympathetic may be unfair. I will grant that to a certain extent. However, the film does not grant that in this. Okay? And the reason why I say this is because the main character in this movie, even though Tom Hardy gets front billing in this movie, the main character is Brendan, which is Joel Edgerton's character. You are meant to sympathize with him. He has all the things that you want in a character that you want to sympathize with. He has morals. He is of good character. He's of good sanity. He has a wife and kids. He's a family man. He's down on his luck. So you can sympathize with him on that end. He's fighting to keep his family alive, to keep his house. He is the ultimate sympathetic character. Whereas Tommy, which is Tom Hardy's character, is a drunk. He abuses pills. He has demons. He is short-tempered, I should say. He is mean. Even though his father is trying to help him, he is miserable with his father, even though there is past trauma there. He is unforgiving. He is relentless. He treats other people like crap, except for one person that is discussed in there, which is, again, the only thing that makes him sympathetic in the movie, to a certain extent. So the movie itself, which I found really odd, when it came to the fight, for some strange reason, they decided to make Tommy a villain. And how they did this was in a scene where the two brothers meet in a beach before the fights. And what essentially is that Brendan is trying to connect with him, trying to open up, and trying to do something to help his brother. And Tommy insults him. Tommy accuses him of things. Tommy wants nothing to do with him. and basically shits on him for even trying. And again, you can say that's the trauma talking. That's his issues talking. That's him not being a bad person. It's just somebody who's wounded, who's dealing with a lot of issues. And I get that. But this movie isn't that deep. And that's an issue. Because if you're going to make a character that complex, you need to spend more time on that character. The example I would give you is The Wrestler. The Wrestler is about one character who has, yes, many flaws, many issues, but they give enough time and effort to that character to make him sympathetic still, even though you don't agree with what he's doing. And that's what's missing with Warrior, especially with Tommy's character, because I really feel the movie wants you to sympathize with Tommy. But the decisions that they make in this movie with Tommy makes it really hard to sympathize. And to me, it went from having this really neat dynamic where obviously these two people were going to meet at the end in the last fight. Duh. But it would have made this interesting dynamic where these two really likable, flawed human beings are going to have to fight to the death to get what they need to survive the next day. And that's added palpable drama that could have worked really well if you made Tommy more sympathetic. And they didn't. And I think that hurts this movie to a sizable degree in this. What this movie reminded me of is a movie in the 2000s called Take It to the Bone. It was with Antonio Banderas and Woody Harrelson, and they played two boxers who went on a field trip who are who are friends, but they take a road trip in order to go to I think it was a Mike Tyson fight and be in the mid card where they would face off against each other. And critics didn't like this dynamic at the time because they have you sympathize with these characters, and then you have to watch them beat the crap out of each other. To what end? And that was a flaw with Take It to the Bone. Take It to the Bone had an interesting dynamic, but and I wouldn't say failed. That's not right. It succeeded to a certain extent, but it could have been a lot better. And Warrior has that same problem, has a completely different problem, where I think that drama really could have worked, but they chickened out because either they didn't have enough time to flesh out Tommy, or the main point was to make Brendan the person that you want to sympathize with and make Tommy more into a villain, which I think hurt the film in that aspect. Let's get back into details too, because another detail that I want to talk about is Brendan's wife. And the actress who plays Brendan's wife is Jennifer Morrison, and she did a good job. Performance is not the problem. My issue is how fast this character accepts the fact that her husband's going back into fighting. And you can say, oh, well, she's about to lose the house and this and that, and she's probably... But she said multiple times throughout the entire film that, then lose the fucking house. I don't want you doing this. But then she became supportive out of nowhere in this film. And I think it would have been a much more interesting dynamic if she was debating throughout the times when the fights were going on as to whether she should root for her husband to win this or be absolutely horrified by what's about to happen to her husband when she's in these fights. It could have been, again, another interesting dynamic that really could have worked to broaden the film and to give it more color and more depth. But again, they rely on the cliche because immediately when he starts fighting, she became the overly supportive, has to root for her husband no matter what character, where in the first half of the film, that's not what she was in the first place. So again, I would say they wussed out on that character as well. And let me get to one other thing with the fights as well. Two big problems I had with the fights. One, there is this fighter that has been teased throughout the entire film called, I think it's Koba, and he is a Russian fighter who literally injures and destroys everybody he comes across, okay? Now, I've watched MMA before. I've watched UFC a bunch before. So I know how it works, okay? Because there are weight classes, there are rules and stuff like I understand MMA. So I'm looking at this in this perspective. When you see Koba and you see Brendan in the same ring, the first thing I thought of when I saw that was, yo, these two aren't in the same weight class. What is this? Now, I think the tournament is meant to be a middleweight tournament, which I thought was weird because I always thought that the heavyweights were the ones that were the most popular. And to put $5 million on middleweights was, I thought, kind of strange. Maybe there's a detail I'm missing. Maybe not. Maybe I'm missing a detail. But when you look at this guy who plays Koba, and you look at Joel Edgerton, as chiseled as he was, there ain't no way that I would believe that Joel Edgerton had a chance against this guy. We're talking about, in my opinion, an 80-pound difference in size, about a 4-inch difference in height, probably better reach on the Koba character as well, and of course, because that's just this type of movie, Brendan wins out of nowhere against this mammoth beast. And I just sat there going, yeah, I don't buy that at all. I don't buy it in the least. Yeah, and that's always a problem with these types of films, too. They worry more about the message and getting the plot along the way they want, and they don't really take realism, or they don't take, I guess realism is the right word. They don't take that into account. They want the plot to move a certain way, and they don't do anything creative to make it interesting. This is how it is. This is how it works, and this is why it is. That is what they do in that. And that fight specifically, I was like, yeah, I don't buy that for a second. The other issue I had with the fights is in the last fight. In the last fight, it's, of course, Tommy versus Brendan. And Tommy works Brendan for a little bit and beats him in the first 2 rounds. Brendan comes back, gets him in I think it's in either an armbar or a Kimura, I forget which, and literally separates his shoulder, breaks his shoulder in the fight. Now, that's not the issue I have. The issue I have is that after he separates the shoulder, the round ends and the fight continues. I mean, again, I've seen some MMA, and I am very certain if someone broke an arm, a leg, a foot, or whatever, a ref would say, yo, you're injured. We're done. It's over. Or a trainer would go, or a doctor would say, yo, he broke his foot. Like, no way. It's over. It's done. Like, there are fights that have been stopped because someone got poked in the eye and they can't see. You cannot make me believe that a ref would take a look at Tommy with one arm dragging and him unable to move it, but him using the other arm to punch it and guard and say, oh yeah, that's fine, whatever. No, because a ref would look at that and go, why aren't both hands up? Why is this one arm dangling? That would be the hint of, oh, we need to stop this fight. The plot contrivance of that alone ruined the final fight for me. Like, I looked at that and went, oh, come on. This fight would be over. They wouldn't allow this. Like, this was a contrivance to make Tommy more sympathetic and more, I guess more interesting and more sympathetic because of how tough and resilient he is. He was willing to fight with one arm completely broken, which at that point I was like, good God, like, really? Like, I don't believe that for a damn second. Yeah, like, it's those issues with the film that again, went from a possible 4-star film, which to me, a 4-star film is a very good film. Is an almost great film. I generally, as principle, I don't give out 5 stars when I first see a movie. Films earn the 5 stars as time goes on, where I start to think, oh wow, it did all these interesting things, it did them very well, nothing beats it, and this deserves a 5 star. I think out of 2008 films I've seen, 48 films have gotten 5 stars from me. So for something to get a 4 star is something that I think is really good. For it to go from 4 star down to a 3 star within an hour just shows, to me, how badly the fights turned out in this. And really, I would say, not ruined the movie, but I would say lessened the quality to a certain degree. And it's a disappointment, because the drama involved in the first half of the movie, or the 2/3 of the movie, is great. It's actually very good, and I was looking forward to the fights. And I hate to say it, but I think the fights ruined it. I think the fights, to a certain extent, ruined the film, and which is sad, because with most sports films, those are even though I think the best sports films don't necessarily make the best scenes the sports scenes, quote unquote, but they still need to be good. They still need to be engaging, and they just weren't in this. I watched this movie and went, wow, that's a disappointment. That could have been a lot better. So now we're done with spoilers. I'll get to my final thoughts. Warrior is a good movie. It could have been a great movie, but it's good, which is unfortunate. I think there's definitely some good performances in the movie. I think that Joel Edgerton has the best performance in the movie, followed by Nick Nolte and then Tom Hardy. All 3 actors were very good. I had a lot of problems with the last hour of the film, especially in relation to the first 2 acts of the film, which set up the drama very well, but then cratered the entire thing, and cratered the entire movie into just a good movie, which is sad. I was genuinely sad that it went the route it did. This movie went from a great movie to a good sports movie, which is what I find pretty disappointing. I think at this point, like, I'm grading it on a handicap because it's a sports movie, and I'm used to sports movies being contrived to a certain extent and to be cliched, and this movie has all the cliches in it, but it could have been a lot more, and they flirted with it being more than what it was, and it just didn't stick the landing. It's a good movie, not great, but I just ended the movie disappointed, and it's sad, really, because I think this could have been, I think it was gearing up to be one of the best sports movies out there. I think in relation to sports movies, it's Bull Durham, Hoop Dreams, and When We Were Kings, I think, are probably the best sports movies. But if you want narrative, it'll be, I just said, Bull Durham, A League of Their Own, He Got Game, I think, are the 3 best sports movies out there, narrative-wise. So if you don't want to count documentaries, those are the best 3. But yeah, disappointing, but good. If you're into sports movies and you haven't watched it, I would definitely recommend it. But if you are looking for a great sports movie that's great as a movie and not just a sports movie, unfortunately, it doesn't fit the bill. Okay, so why don't we get into some quick news before I get into the question. And the news today, I was going to talk about the delays from Marvel, but since I talked about the trailer for Wakanda Forever last week, I think I'll just keep Marvel to the side at this point. I am a big fan of the late 80s, early 90s spoof movies. I love these movies, and the two ones that I love the most, of course, are Naked Gun and Hot Shots, because it was announced that we have a director for the new Naked Gun movie, and it's I forget his name. His name is Akiva. I think it's Akiva Schaffer. Yes, Akiva Schaffer, and he's from The Lonely Island, if I recall correctly, and he is directing the new Naked Gun movie, and it looks as if they found who's going to be Lieutenant Frank Drebin, and the person it's not confirmed, but it looks to be that who is signing up to be Frank Drebin is Liam Neeson. Now, I know some of you are hearing this and going, what? Liam Neeson? Taking Liam Neeson? Schindler's List Liam Neeson? That Liam Neeson? Were they turning into a drama? That makes no sense. Why would you have Liam Neeson in that type of role? And I will say, at first, I was with you. I looked at it and went, what? That makes no sense. But then I had to remind myself of something. And that is that Leslie Nielsen, before Airplane, was a very serious actor. He did dramatic roles all the time. That's just what the type of movies that he was doing before he started doing these spoofs. And before he did the spoof that made him mega famous, which is The Naked Gun. And that's what made Liam Neeson's performances in Airplane and The Naked Gun so damn good. Because he took it very seriously. His characters were very serious and deadpan, and because of it, it made it so much more funnier than if the character was an outright comedic goofball, which of course became the problem with Liam Neeson's other films outside of The Naked Gun, like 2001. God, what was it? I forgot what that one. That was awful. Space Oddity. That was awful. And Spy Hard and Wrongfully Accused. Well, you know what? Actually, I'll take that back. Wrongfully Accused was okay. It wasn't great, but it was okay. So I'll pass on that one. That was fine. I'm okay with that. But yeah, but that's what made Leslie Nielsen really funny, is that he was so deadpan with his delivery and so earnest and serious that it added to the comedy. And I think that can work with Liam Neeson in this. So I don't know if he would do the exact same thing as what he would do in like Taken and be ultra serious and deadly and stuff, and then try to work that for comedy. You would have to do something drastically different for that. But Liam Neeson's a good actor, and he's done comedies before, so it's not like comedy is out of his wheelhouse. Let me look at his IMDb real quick, since it's here, and let me look at some of the comedies he did. He's known for his drama work, of course. I mean, he was in A-Team, which, okay. What can you do on that one? But let me look at some of the comedies that he's done. He did Gunshy, which was awful. Gunshy was awful, so don't put that against him. He did The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. I remember that. He's been in The Orville a couple of times, apparently. What else? I mean, don't get me wrong. He's a fantastic, serious, dramatic actor. But he can do comedy. Apparently, he played Don Cheadle in Inside Amy Schumer. I gotta look at that sketch then, because if that's the case, I kind of want to see it. Okay. He's done comedies, is what I'm trying to say. And he's done pretty well in them, I think. Except for A Million Ways to Die in the West. That was awful. That was such a bad movie. Ugh. But anyway, yeah, he knows how to do comedy, is what I'm saying. He can do pretty good in it. So it's not without the realm of possibility he can do it. But I think the casting of him being in The Dark Knight and being Frank Drebin, I think is what he's going to play. I think it's inspired casting, and I think could work. So I know a lot of you are going to be like, that is so weird. I can't see it. That doesn't make sense. I'm going to say withhold judgment because I think that could work. And the reason why is because it's worked before. And it's worked before with Leslie Nielsen. So if it worked with Leslie Nielsen, I don't see how it can't work with Liam Neeson. And of course, this is all rumor. It could fall apart. It could end up not working. But I think the reaction to it being, oh my God, that sounds awful. I think give it a chance. I think you might be surprised on that one. All right, so we are at the end of the episode, so I'm going to talk about the last question that we have here. I usually say I would have a question for you, but Zero isn't here, so I will just go on with the question. So, Netflix announced today that they now have a streaming plan with ads, and the plan is as such. For $6.99, you will get you'll get streaming with ads. Yeah, so in the US, Canada, Australia, Brazil, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Korea, Mexico, Spain, and the UK, they're rolling out this plan where you can get Netflix at a cheaper rate, but with ads. And basically what they're saying is the ads will be 15 to 30 seconds in length. It will play before and during TV series and movies. So that's basically akin to what Hulu does. And if I recall correctly, the advertisements will be every 20 minutes, depending on what is being played. 20 minutes, 30 minutes, possibly. I'm not sure on that one, but you can expect maybe, I think I read 2 to 3 minutes of ads every hour from when you're watching a show. Now, my opinion on this is this, okay? When it comes to TV shows, I'm completely fine with ads. I am. I'm completely okay with it. I'm used to watching TV shows with ads. I am. Even when there's not supposed to be ads on a TV show, like let's say with Ozark or something like that, I'm fine with ads because a lot of these TV shows are built with ads in mind. So they have breaks and they have breaks in the action where you can have those ads. So I'm actually okay with it with TV shows. So that's why when I have Hulu, I have it with ads because I don't care. If it's TV shows, it's fine. I can deal with the ads. Movies, on the other hand, I have an issue with because you're supposed to go through the movie from beginning to end with as little breaks as possible. And the first thing I thought of is having the Netflix subscription and watching The Irishman, which is a near 4-hour film. Okay? And then you're going to intersperse ads every 15, 20 minutes in the action in the movie in The Irishman. So then you're going to have stuff happen in The Irishman and then ad break for Tide. And then 20 minutes and then ad break for Arm & Hammer. And then 20 minutes, and it's just going to mess with the flow of the film. Because films are not made to have these ad breaks. And if that's what they're doing, and it sounds like that's what they're doing, that's a terrible move. I understand with TV shows, I do. But with movies, you can't do it. And it looks as if that some filmmakers and some studios recognize that, because it says on the article that they had from Netflix is that there are only some movies that will have this. And those that don't have them are not going to be accessible with that plan. So if you have a Netflix with ads plan, you're going to get less content. Because I guess some filmmakers are going to say, I don't want ads in between my movie. So if that's the case, I don't want that to be shown. So then you're automatically going to get less. You're going to get less content, and I'm going to bet some money that The Irishman is probably going to be one that is not going to have ads. I'm going to bet that Beasts of No Nation is another. Marriage Story, Roma, The really celebrated Mank, the celebrated movies that Netflix has had in the past few years, I can foresee the filmmakers going, yeah, if you have that, take it off there, because I don't want people to watch my movies with ads. Forget it. I don't want that whatsoever. And if that's the case, I mean, then to me, because I watch mostly movies, I only watch shows every once in a while. So, and I haven't had Netflix, I think, in 6 months. And I was going to look at this ad thing and go, I mean, if it's for TV shows, fine. But if it's like $6.99 and I only get ads on TV shows, okay, I'll plop down $7 a month, fine. But if you're going to put it in movies too, I'm not interested. I don't want it. I just feel like that's not a good idea. And I know a lot of people are now used to watching TV shows without ads. And I get that too. I understand. But I've been used to it for a long time, so for it to come back is not a big deal to me when it comes to TV shows. But with movies, nah, fam. I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't watch an intense scene of a movie or a really dramatic scene in a movie that has all this buildup and all this drama, and then there's a commercial for a kid's toy. It's going to ruin this. It's going to ruin the experience. And yeah, you can debate that it would do the same with TV, but I think TV is much more equipped for that. So, yeah. I mean, if you don't care, I mean, this is a good deal. $7 for Netflix. I think Netflix is like what now, $15 a month? I think. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't had Netflix in a while. But yeah, like on that case, if you don't care, great, go for it. If you do and you like Netflix's content, I guess you're not paying for this. Otherwise, the thought of watching a movie and getting ads just is like, that's not. I don't like that at all. So, to me, I don't like it. I'm not gonna partake. And yeah, that's all I can say about that at this point. So, if you're interested, I think it's coming out in November. So be ready for that if you are interested. All right, so we are at the end of this episode, but before I go, I'll talk about the next themes for the next couple of films that I'm watching and I'm reviewing. Yeah, so of course it's October, and of course some of you weirdos like Halloween for some ungodly reason. Like, God, especially women, good Lord. I know so many women who love fall and love Halloween and scary movies, and I don't fucking get it for the life of me. But anyway, whatever. I'm not going to get into that. I hate scary movies. It's not that I'm scared by them. I just don't think they're entertaining in the slightest. If the only entertainment they are is to scare you, I don't find it very entertaining, unless you're saying something deeper and more meaningful. I think one of the few horror movies I've liked in the past few years is Midsommar, the Ari Aster film with Florence Pugh, who did a really good performance in that movie. So that's like one of the few I like. Descent from like the 2000s was another good one that I liked. But other than that, I don't like horror movies. So here is what I'm going to do. I am going to watch some non-scary, scary movies. And what I mean by this is movies that are appropriate for the Halloween season that aren't necessarily scary films. So the first film that we're going to see is Arsenic and Old Lace, directed by Frank Capra and starring Cary Grant. I had another film in mind until someone pointed out that this is actually a Halloween film. And since I'm getting this from the Criterion Flash sale, hint, hint at what I'm going to be talking about next week, along with what's announced from Criterion for January, I thought there's no better time than ever to watch Arsenic and Old Lace. So, and I've been looking forward to watching it. I watched this, so long ago, but I don't remember most of it. I think I was like 6 or 7 when I watched it. But yeah, I've been meaning to watch it again, and I think and that's what we're going to do. I'm going to watch for next week Arsenic and Old Lace, starring Cary Grant and directed by Frank Capra. So if you are interested, go ahead and watch that. Watch that for next week and come back and you can comment on the review on Twitter or on YouTube or wherever you get the podcast. Well, on that note, this is the end of the Capital Games Movie Club. Tune in next week where I discuss the movie Arsenic and Old Lace, starring Cary Grant and directed by Frank Capra. I am The Wiz. Talk to you next week.